emotion into energy in motion. And now I challenge all of our listeners. Is that true? Does an emotion create a motion? Does an emotion create an action? Energy in motion, emotion does it. Let's think of the case you just talked about or spoke about. I am scared, I run. I'm angry, I yell. You're depressed, you shy away. Every emotion is energy in motion. It gives you an action. We can actually start breaking down those emotions and thinking, what is the action that's coming out of this emotion? What action do I want? How can I work that backwards to actually dissect the emotion so that the action or the motion part of it is appropriate?
Welcome to another episode of Beyond Circumstances, where we explore everything that has to do with moving beyond circumstances, whether it's above it, beneath it, on the sides, or just through. And today I have with me the amazing Ellen Kocher. Hi, Ellen.
Hello, Shiri. The amazing Shiri.
So Ellen Kocher, a.k.a. soulmate.
A.k.a. soulmate.
A.k.a. soulmate.
I was almost offended you called me by my name.
Because we usually call each other soulmate.
Yes.
A few words about how I met soulmate. It was a few years ago. We were both being interviewed to the position of co-leader of the ICF Health and Wellness Coaching, Community of Practice of Health and Wellness Coaching. And we had this joint interview. I think that we were 3 applicants. And I just saw this lady, this blonde lady, and she was so smart. And she was so energetic. And I was like, ooh, I want to be a friend. And then when they announced the winners, and I realized that we were both selected to be co-leaders, I was just so happy. And we had 2 amazing years co-leading the ICF Health and Wellness Coaching Community.
3 years.
Practice. 3 years. Was it 3 years?
3 years.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was during COVID.
The 2 COVID years and the year after.
Yeah. And we did some amazing work together. We put some really groundbreaking content together and we did amazing things. So it was pretty clear. And then I want to invite you to talk about the work that you do in the field because you do amazing stuff. So, soulmate, introduce yourself for those who don't know you yet.
For those who don't know me, thank you so much, Shiri. Thank you so much. I love the name of your podcast, Beyond Circumstances. And I think we could just use that maybe even to describe who I am for those who don't know me. So I was born in the United States, and going beyond circumstances, I decided to do a year abroad in Italy during my finance and economics studies. And that was a shift. I fell in love with Italy, fell in love with Europe, and decided to come back post-grad to Switzerland to learn another language. And then beyond circumstances once again, I met a Swiss-German guy, which was not at all in the cards, and lived happily ever after in Switzerland. Started my career in finance, and then, once again, beyond circumstances, things started happening. I started questioning my own self-care, life care, and I shifted. I shifted my focus from finance toward health and well-being, and I started in the weight loss area, and after about 9 years, once again, that kind of something happened beyond circumstances. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel big enough, and that's when I started my journey as a health and wellness coach. And I think each one of these shifts, as you say, beyond circumstances, led me to the next thing. And that led me to become a certified coach. It led me to go from ACC to PCC to master certified coach. It also allowed me to do my master's degree in health and wellness coaching, expertise in workplace well-being, and finally to become, like I said, a master certified coach. The other thing I would say, which is another major shift in me, who I am professionally and personally, is again beyond circumstances. I recognized in the workplace about 5 years ago that people over 50 were beyond certain circumstances, but entering into others. And that's when I published my first book on the 50 plus demographic. And that has blossomed, morphed, and shifted into a very impactful work around ageism, pre-retirement, menopause, andropause, preparing the 3rd chapter, all the way up to sustainable living. So fascinating how these circumstances have shifted my journey professionally and personally all the way along.
I love that. I love that. And I'm very familiar with the work that you do. So, this is a question that I always start with. You spoke a lot about a lot of shifts. So, what is one thing, and maybe more than one thing, that you feel from your experience, professional and personal, because we can't always separate? What are some things that people get wrong when they're trying to move beyond circumstances or when circumstances changed?
That's a great question. And both of us have started as we've matured in our coaching and professional lives. We've both started doing a lot of training of younger professionals in this world. And it's a mistake I often see either when young professionals are getting into a career or people are shifting in their career. What happens, Shiri, is they set a goal and they go for it because it's in their mind. They're thinking the circumstances are different. I'm going to shift. I'm going to run here. Rather than actually using a coach approach and saying, you know what? Something's off. The circumstance is different, and asking what is needed. Every single webinar, course, anything I've created has been on demand because I've listened. And then I've been able to repeat it and propose it to others rather than the other way around, me deciding where I want to go and head for it. I listen, and I think that agility to adapt to what's thrown at you rather than just go for what you believe is right is a more appropriate approach.
Yeah. I think there's a balance here, and one is really willing to see what has changed in the field. Okay. And make sure that I'm not getting over attached to the goal that I said. Following a goal is important, but then sometimes we lose the way and we're so attached. Fabulous. So
Yeah, I
let's talk
agree
about
with you
emotions.
very much there. I really agree with you there.
Yeah. So let's talk about emotions, shall we? So here's the
Let's.
thing. Yeah, we talk a lot about emotional agility in coaching and shifting from one phase to another phase, and where circumstances change. Oftentimes we feel betrayed or we feel there's a sense of unclarity. So before we go into emotions, okay, what are some things that we can do with our clients to help them rebuild confidence and gain that clarity when circumstances all of a sudden change and it's not clear? The path isn't clear.
I think the best thing to do when we're in an unclear situation is to seek out information, to ask other people, ask
Yeah.
peers. This is how you and I have become soulmates. Throughout the years, we have shared, we have exchanged, we have asked questions, we have listened to each other. And I think having a group of masterminds, of mentors, of other people that we can ask, I also think it's very important that those people come from outside of our direct network. I belong to a few women's professional organizations and some different kinds of organizations where I can actually listen to other sides of questions or circumstances that I'm faced with, because what I'm seeing may not be the full picture. So I do think it's definitely worth asking around and then listening. And I want to come back to something you just said that is so critical, Shuri, which is without attachment. Without attachment, I do not have to judge. And I think you're aware that we've just changed the International Coaching Federation core competencies. One of the competencies that they have changed is 711, which has to do with this non-attachment to our coaching beliefs. There is science, which is information, but what we believe about what can be done with that information, we don't need to be attached to. And so what that means is coaching oneself in that same way without attachment, I think is probably the best way to navigate those circumstances.
Yeah. And I love what you said about going outside of our normal echo chamber when we're looking for information. And that's easier said than done, because what we will find oftentimes are perspectives that might make us uncomfortable, things that are new, that are unfamiliar, might not be aligned with our model of the world. And then we really need that non-attachment to be able to kind of open up and say, "Oh, I wonder what's here. I wonder what's here." Can we focus on menopause?
We can. We can have a hot flash moment. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm having those. But I want to, I said earlier that I want to bring it, and talk about emotions. And one of the things that we experience in menopause is this, this emotional chaos because of hormonal changes and stuff like that. And it can be pretty overwhelming. And I know that for many coaches, when the client is going through emotional chaos, the first thing they tend to do is take a step back and refer the client to someone else. So when we're coaching women in menopause, okay, what is something that we need to know about emotions?
Well, one of the first things I think that we need to know, and not directly about emotions, but that will be related, is we need, again, it's going to come back to the same similar type of thing. We need to inform ourselves. We need to raise awareness. And I want to go again beyond awareness, just me understanding what the hormonal shift might do to my emotions. Yes, that's important. It's also important that everybody around me understands that, because there's nothing worse. It happened to me recently because I deliver these sessions in the workplace for men and women, young and old, where a young man came in and he said, I need to understand my boss. She's driving me crazy. And right, how much nicer is it for the boss if she's being impatient, she's got emotions running high, but the person has empathy because he gets it. So I think that, again, we're back into raising awareness beyond our own private cylinder, our own
Yeah.
tunnel, and really getting the community to understanding that there is a link between hormones and emotions. They are both happening in the same organ. They're both happening in the brain. Once we understand that, we can unpack it with humor, with understanding. We have language. It is no longer taboo for the men and the women in the room. This guy doesn't even realize he has become like the joke of half of my workplace sessions from that one remark he made. And he was a very young man, probably in his young 30s. And yet it really broke the ice for everyone to discuss menopause. So I do think it has to do with awareness, self, and surroundings.
So let's expand the awareness and talk about the male version of menopause.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked this. So let me just tie together your 4 questions. About 12 years ago, a man HR director called me and said, Ellen, everybody in my workplace is asking for menopause. Can you create a session for us? So there we have my circumstance. I didn't have anything, but I was able to do it. Therefore, I built a menopause session for this bank, major global bank. We delivered it, and in one of the sessions 12 years ago, one of the gentlemen, not the one that asked me to come in to do menopause, not the HR director, one of the gentlemen in the session said, we should have this for men too. And I said, you are right. How can we talk about equity? How can we talk about equality and gender balance without talking about andropause? So the course that I propose in workplaces is called The Pause, or Time to Take a Pause, a modern vision of menopause and andropause, where we compare. We come down to say what's the same, what's different, and what do we do about this in a workplace and at home? Because rightfully said, Shiri, if we don't, we're not being fair.
That's true. And I think there's so much ignorance about
Yeah, they call it midlife crisis.
yeah, and that's I don't like that term. That's something that's
No,
wrong.
terrible. It's terribly rude.
It is rude. It
It's
is rude.
judgmental.
Yeah. So, what are some resilience building tips that you would give, to men and to women going through the pause?
I love that question. It's a great question. And you know what? I can actually relate this to something that will relate to perhaps even more of your audience than just those going through the pause. When we look at andropause and menopause, they are both hormonal transitions in the body. I don't think that's rocket science. Everybody on your call in listening to this podcast
Yeah.
understands that. What they might not understand, I would venture to guess that maybe half of them do, is that any stressor in your life, whether it is a pause stressor or another kind of stressor, also has an effect on your hormones, principally on your cortisol. So, what we're going to look for when we look at resilience is anything we can do to balance out our hormones. Interestingly enough, the things we do to balance out our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, or our estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, the resilience tips are the same. So, here
Mm.
we are under the resilience hat. We are going to look at 4 areas: nutrition, activity, sleep, and screen time. And we are within each of those items, we're going to say, what are the foods, for example, under nutrition, that cause stress on the body, that cause a hormonal reaction on the body? We're going to try to lessen them. And those that balance out the body's nutrition, we will try to augment them. The same with activity, the same with sleep, the same with screen time.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So, one of the things that cortisol does, it takes the hormone out of balance. And one of the things that we have when we are unbalanced, our hormones are unbalanced, is our emotions feel unbalanced as well. So I know that a lot of coaches kind of shy away from emotions. As I said earlier, they tend to refer a client that is in emotional distress. But before a client reaches an emotional distress, I think it's our perspective of coaching. And I think one distinction that we make between positive emotions and negative emotions is a very unfair distinction.
Totally unfair.
So, what are some perspectives that you would offer coaches
Mm.
around emotions?
Thank you. Interestingly enough, in the book that I wrote and in the work that I do with the 50 plus, that's where I actually speak the most about emotions because it's an emotional life transition. And then working backwards, I've actually used these techniques now with all audiences. And I'm going to explain it to you because it seems to land really, really well with people. I like to break down the word emotion into energy in motion. And now I challenge all of our listeners. Is that true? Does an emotion create a motion? Does an emotion create an action? Energy in motion, emotion, does it? Well, let's think of the case you just talked about or spoke about. I'm scared, I run. I'm angry, I yell. You're depressed, you shy away. Every emotion is energy in motion. It gives you an action. Once we understand that, we can actually start breaking down those emotions and thinking, what is the action that's coming out of this emotion? What action do I want? How can I work that backwards to actually dissect the emotion so that the action or the motion part of it is appropriate? And interestingly enough, all of those resilience tools we looked at earlier, nutrition, activity, sleep, and screen time, which all include, by the way, breathing, oxygenating, etc., will also help us to regulate those emotions. There's maybe one more thing I would add to that because the energy in motion lands really well. People find they see the action. They're beyond positive and negative emotions. We're really in thought leads to action. It lands really well. The other thing is putting a name on it because whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, whether it's joy, we will act differently. If I'm anxious, I might not run. I might just shy away.
Yeah.
If I'm scared, I might run like the devil. So being able to name it, and this, name it to tame it, to actually go, okay, my action was that. So what was my emotion? And then we can dissect it and start managing it properly.
Yep. I think it's a lot about how we speak about emotions, the names that we use. And there's another attachment to it. Are we willing to change our vocabulary around words? And oftentimes, we take emotions and we turn them into adjectives, okay? There's also a lot of trends when it comes to emotion. I find that, there is people are pretty, I'm calling it happy trigger, like linguistically happy trigger, or trigger happy with the words depression and the words trauma. Okay. They're very easily thrown, into the space. Every little sadness is
Agreed.
trauma or depression. Not necessarily true. Not necessarily true. And even if it is, what does that mean? Because oftentimes when people say, okay, I am depressed, the motion of depressed, okay, the energy of it is like back and down. Okay. I kind of like go into my cocoon. What if I were doing something else with that depression? Okay. What if I would go back, but I wouldn't go down? I'd try to go up, or maybe I'd go forward into a connection with someone. So I think
Mhm.
that our language around emotions is important. And just having a
I would
conversation,
love to
not,
expand on that.
yeah, let's do that.
I would love to expand on that. Do you remember we listened to an amazing talk with Brene Brown? I
Yep.
think it was about 3, 4 years ago. And you just said in your example, I am depressed. In my example, I said I am stressed. Using the word am when we express emotions embodies them completely. If I am
Completely.
stressed, I am depressed, it is really hard to get out of that.
It
If
becomes my
we
identity.
instead
Yeah.
exactly. If instead we use, I notice I am feeling
Yep.
depressed, sad, joyful, then I can pick it up and do something with it because I'm noticing it. It's again that non attached,
Exactly.
I am not depressed. I'm noticing I feel it. Very, very different in terms of being in, again, beyond circumstances. We are in a place to manage it. We're from the outside in. It is not from the inside out, as you very
Yep.
well demonstrated in the depression.
Yeah. So let me add to that. So one is I'm noticing that I'm feeling. Another can be I'm noticing I'm having an experience, or right now I'm in a place where I'm
Great one.
feeling, yeah, or I am in a place where I'm having an experience, okay? Or this is coming
Mhm.
up for me. There is sadness inside me. There is happiness around me. I think, similar to illnesses, the I am. Okay, we need to be careful with that. I know that in several languages, for example, a lot of names of illnesses have become adjectives. Okay, like instead of I have cancer, I'm cancerous, or I'm a diabetic, stuff like that.
Right.
And we need to be so careful with the identity. Oh my God, that
Makes
change
perfect
in
sense.
every wonderful. So before we wrap this up, let's talk about self care. Okay, what is one or maybe two tips that you'd like to offer for self care?
I mean, I have so many. It's hard to find
I
the
know.
top one or
Okay,
the
yeah,
top. I think number one, and I think, you and I have talked about this a lot. And again, I'll give two because as I always say, it's like the gears of a beautiful Swiss watch. With one gear, it won't even run. And with two gears or more, and there are more, they need to be intertwined with each other. And every once in a while, we need to rewind the whole watch. Number one would be sleep, getting
Mm.
enough sleep, getting enough quality sleep, which leads to number two, which is getting outside and moving, whether it's walking, running, dancing, outdoors, moving every day, non-negotiable, which will allow you to sleep better. And when you sleep,
True.
you'll feel like doing it more. So they're completely interrelated in
Yeah.
our watch.
It's so amazing. Sometimes I tell clients, start by taking the stairs. It's as simple as that. Okay. And this morning I had a whole session around sleep with a client that's, navigating a very complex medical condition, and she hasn't been sleeping properly lately because of pain. And that's just threw her completely off balance. So
Of
the
course it
whole coaching
does.
session was, yeah, let's think outside the box and find ways to create, for you to sleep, but also rest. So deep rest. Sometimes, when sleep isn't that available, you can't get that 8 hours sleep at night. So, my dear, where can people find and learn more about you and the work that you do?
Where they can find and learn more about me in lots of places. Probably the best place is to link into me because I do quite a bit of publishing, a lot of writing. I love to post. I love to repost your content, other people's content. That's a great place to get to know me a little bit. My main website, I have two websites, is Wealthness, Health, UHEALTHNESS.ch for Switzerland. I am in Switzerland ever since that first circumstance that brought me here. And then my second website is for the 50 plus, everything around 50 plus, few free chapters of my book. It's called Wake Up, Shake Up, Thrive.com. So those are three places. And I love meeting new people because we never know what circumstances that will bring us beyond.
So true. So true. Ellen, soulmate, thank you so much for saying yes and being a guest.
Soulmate, thank you so much.
So, audience, thank you for joining us, for making time and listening to this episode. If your coach wants to learn how to support clients through life's hardest challenges and help your clients navigate beyond circumstances, find us on social media and tune into more episodes. So thank you very much. And I will see you in the next episode. Ellen, thank you again.
You're welcome.